This week's episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Use the coupon code Rollins and get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Polish or potential? Every year, teams picking in the top 5 ask themselves that very question over and over again. Do you want the prospect that has polished technique, meticulous attention to detail, but doesn't quite possess the physical traits that project to superstardom? Or do you want the limitless potential, the freak athlete who looks like he's already being fitted for a gold jacket, but isn't as refined in his craft or arsenal of moves? Chase Young, who's about to be drafted in the top 5, represents that insane potential. This past season, he set an Ohio State record with 16.5 sacks, had a sack rate of 5.4%, and a pressure rate of 20%. His combination of speed and athleticism is truly unparalleled, and I prayed for the families of those offensive linemen that faced him each and every week. The potential for Young to have a Lawrence Taylor type impact is certainly in his range of outcomes, but there are major holes in his game that need to be addressed. He lacks the arsenal of moves that his Ohio State counterpart and current San Francisco 49er Nick Bosa utilizes to routinely devastate offensive linemen. Bosa has mastered the technical aspects of the position, but there were questions about his athleticism coming out of the draft. He and Young represent both sides of the debate. Both are defensive ends, and both were indoctrinated by Ohio State's legendary defensive line coach Larry Johnson. Coach Johnson installs a system for his pass rushers. That system preaches a smaller number of moves, but presents an answer and counter for every situation. Whatever the offensive lineman does, you do the opposite and make them wrong. The system is based around counter moves, which Johnson refers to as side scissors. Other coaches call them a swipe move, double swipe, or wipe. He teaches both inside and outside side scissors, where you draw out the offensive lineman's arms, then swipe them away and bend around the edge in either direction. If that lineman has seen enough and just stops putting his arms up altogether, that leaves his chest exposed and he gets bull rushed into oblivion. Let's take a look at what that side scissors moves looks like and how Young weaponizes it and combines it with his athletic gifts. His get-off and quick twitch movement skills are the best you'll see from any college defensive end. He routinely beats linemen off the ball and is sizzling past them before they even get out of their stance. Oftentimes, this causes them to panic and flail out their arms to choke off the angle, which plays right into Young's favorite move, the outside side scissors. This is where Young uses his speed and bend, two critical traits for every elite pass rusher. He is so quick around the edge, the lineman can't position in front of him and drive him backwards. When Young takes that edge, he knows the tackle will be late and shoot his hands. When using side scissors, Coach Johnson teaches to aim your hands at the lineman's elbows. If he pulls his arms back, then you still end up hitting his hands and swiping them away. The tackle does manage to get his hands on Young, but it's from a poor angle. This is where his elite bend comes into play. A pass rusher's bend is a lot like turning a sharp corner on a motorcycle. If Young isn't able to contort his body and bend down low to the ground, the tackle can push him outside the perimeter of the pocket, but that freaky athleticism allows him to create a smaller surface for the lineman to attack. The lower you can get, the smaller the area for the lineman to connect. One of Coach Johnson's main points is snapping and rolling your hips to your target so you can set your entire body on a track towards your landmark. Young bends around the corner and aims his hips straight at the quarterback, who is just reaching the top of his drop, and the play is completely ruined. So what happens when offensive tackles repeatedly get beat by that outside side scissor speed rush and start to compensate by oversetting way outside? Well, that's the beauty of Coach Johnson's system. There's an answer for everything. To make the system go, Young closes the space to the tackle as quickly as possible. He wants that tackle to panic and shoot out his arms. When Young sees the tackle overset, the edge choked off, and that right arm start to fly out, he hits him with the inside side scissors. Look how much space there is between the tackle and the guard. Young takes his inside hand and places it flush on the inside elbow. He's coached to take his outside leg and drive it through his body so he can redirect his hips on target as quickly as possible. Young sees the tackle's movement and punishes that movement. Wherever he goes, Young does the opposite and crushes the quarterback. This side scissor system is all based on reacting to the lineman's reaction. On this play, Young does a fantastic job of countering back to the inside, but this is one of the only inside side scissors moves I saw him attempt. When I studied his film, it's not always clear if he's reacting or has his attack pre-planned, and that gives me pause on grading him as an elite level player. When tackles become wary of getting their arms swiped all day, they lower their arms, which forces Young to make the initial move. By keeping their arms down, there's nothing to swipe, but it leaves their chest completely exposed for a bull rush. This is the issue with Young's game. You rarely see his power moves even when that's the best and maybe only option. With the tackle swinging his arms outside his body, this is screaming for a bull rush or speed to power move, which are critical aspects of Coach Johnson's system. But even though Young actually does possess that move, and has the physical and athletic profile to execute killer bull rushes, he almost never takes advantage. He falls in love with his outside side scissors or even just his speed rush around the edge, and isn't reacting and countering to what the lineman is doing. He's still so quick and so bendy that despite using the wrong move, he still shrinks that area where the tackle can hit him and manages to get the sack. But you can't just speed around the edge every play against NFL caliber offensive linemen. When we compare him with Nick Bosa, who does utilize those counter moves and does have that polished technique, we can see what Young needs to reach legendary status. Bosa can use every move in the system, and it's all based on countering the reaction of the offensive lineman during the play. In the Super Bowl, Bosa had 12 pressures and 10 hurries and was destroying left tackle Eric Fisher every single play. Fisher had 2 weeks to study for Bosa and was well aware of these side scissor moves. On one of the first plays of the game, it was pretty obvious that Fisher decided side scissors was the move he was most worried about. So he kept his hands low and away from being swiped and challenged Bosa's ability to counter with power. There are several areas of Bosa's game that Young could study and use to improve upon. For example, every one of Bosa's get-offs looks exactly the same during the first 2 steps, which keeps the lineman guessing. As he fires off the ball, he is low to the ground, which maintains his pad leverage. Right here, he truly has a 3-way go, whether it's in or outside side scissors or his bull rush, and Fisher has no idea which one it's gonna be. When Bosa sees the low hands, he sinks down even further and drives through Fisher's pads, smashing him directly towards Mahomes. By keeping that low pad leverage, he fires his glutes and legs and harnesses every last bit of his power to knock Fisher straight backwards. Now Fisher has to keep his hands up to protect his chest to stop the bull rush. By establishing that power so early in the game, Bosa has side scissors to both sides all set up, making the move that much more deadly. He doesn't have that crazy speed and get off like Young, so he was forced to master the different techniques of the position. Watch how similar this rush looks compared to the play before. Bosa gets right into the kitchen of Fisher to force him to make the first move. When Bosa is going inside or out, he always takes a hard step in the opposite direction of where he ends up. Pass rushers refer to an outside step as a counter and an inside step as a jab. When Bosa wants to go inside, he'll take a hard counter step to create space and maximum lean from the tackle. When he sees Fisher's arms up to guard against the bull rush, he explodes inside. Fisher, off balance, shoots his inside arm to recover, which plays perfectly to the inside side scissors move. Fisher gets away with a little hold, and Mahomes quickly fires the ball, but Bosa has effectively threatened the inside. Later, in the fourth quarter, Fisher really has no idea what's coming. Now he has to have his arms up to guard against the bull rush and worry about being beaten across his face by yet another side scissors, especially to the inside where Bosa just attacked him. So to counter, he sets to that inside to guard against the inside move. Bosa instantly reads that in just his first step and begins to set up his attack. He takes a giant jab step to force Fisher even more inside, then in one motion brings his left leg all the way across his body to snap and roll his hips, executing the outside side scissors with perfect hand placement on Fisher's elbow. This shows all the polish and technique that Bosa has mastered, but also shows he's missing some of what Young has more than enough of, that elite bendy athleticism. Young's ability to bend around the edge, flatten the angle, and destroy the quarterback is in the 1% of the 1%. Because Bosa doesn't quite have those abilities, there's more surface area for Fisher to target, and he pushes Bosa around the edge just enough for Mahomes to escape through the open alley. Bosa has good bend and is able to snap and roll his hips pretty well, but he doesn't have the rare bend and speed that Young possesses. Young's problem is that he falls in love with that elite combination and repeatedly uses his outside side scissor speed rush even when he shouldn't. He has an issue with his pad leverage and often pops straight up out of his stance, limiting the effectiveness of his bull rush. This causes him to shy away from his power moves and rely almost exclusively on his go-to. Penn State knew this, and it was obvious their game plan was to guard against the side scissors and allow Young free access to the chest of each offensive lineman, which was just begging for a bull rush. But he didn't take advantage. Even in a game where he had 3 sacks, the quality of his play didn't match the impressive statistical production. He honestly could have had twice that many, but he used that outside move again and again. He's not reacting to the tackle's movement at all, and uses outside side scissors when there's really nothing to scissor. The tackle's chest is wide open. Young just needs to drop his weight, sink his hips, and explode through the chest. He still gets the sack thanks to his bend and speed, but when they're sitting on this same move in the NFL, it's not going to work like it did in college. His speed is so deadly, against college competition, he can get away with it and dominate. But if he can't consistently attack the weaknesses of offensive linemen, he's not going to be able to reach the generational talent potential that is out there for the taking. He had so many opportunities to throw counter moves at tackles whose chests were wide open, but he just didn't. We saw that inside side scissors counter earlier in this episode, but that was really the only example I could find. From the jump, Young should be thinking bull rush. The tackle is straight up in the air, hands down low, chest exposed. But Young also stands straight upwards, which neutralizes his pad leverage advantage. He needs to stay low to the ground and bulldoze this guy, but instead he tries to burn him around the edge. When an outside speed rush is met with a tackle who's waiting on it, it's just not effective. Young misses the scissors move, which he shouldn't have even tried in the first place, and gets pushed away from the pocket. This tells me he's planning his moves before the play starts and isn't utilizing the counters that Coach Johnson teaches. He relies so heavily on his speed, I'm curious to see what happens in the NFL when teams take away speed and force him to rely on his counter moves. There aren't many tackles who can keep up with him right now, but you can catch glimpses of what it'll look like if his favorite move is taken away. When he doesn't have his speed and doesn't have a favorable angle, his bendiness isn't quite as useful. When he's contacted before he has the edge, there's more surface area for the tackle to hit, and the outside move isn't as effective. Young is a freak athlete with immense power. He shouldn't have to rely solely on speed and finesse. It took him the entire game to bust out a power move, and with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, he used a speed to power rush that annihilated the tackle. He pops up a little bit out of his stance, but as he turns his speed to power, he drops his pads and uses his leverage to run straight through the lineman, who is once again allowing direct access to his chest. This is Young showing the polish that would unlock that sky-high potential. He had 16.5 sacks this year, but he could have had 25 if he was utilizing his power more often. If he was taking advantage of oversetting linemen with wide open chests and using inside side scissors like Coach Johnson taught him to, he would be even more dominant. He has a higher ceiling than Bosa thanks to his athleticism, speed, and bend, but because he has yet to unleash the more technical parts of his game, at this moment he has a lower floor. He could very well end up being a one-trick pony, speed rushing edges for the next 10 years, and that's not a bad thing. That's fine. That's a type of player every NFL team needs. Or he could become an elite pass rusher, refine and develop his tools, use his raw power and deploy counter moves to keep linemen off balance. If he can combine his physical tools with just 50% of Nick Bosa's tactical prowess, he could be the very best we've ever seen. I want to thank our friends at Squarespace for sponsoring this week's episode. Squarespace has proven to be the best site builder for if you want to create a professional website. When I make my weekly episodes, I want as many people as possible to see all the hard work and effort I put into production. And Squarespace helps me do that with super smooth, clean looking design templates, really intuitive advanced functions that are actually really easy to use, and an overall website builder that makes my videos really stand out. I was surprised how easy everything is to use. And I know if something does come up and I do get stuck, they have 24/7 award-winning customer support to help me out. You can head over to squarespace.com for a free trial just to feel it out, and if you decide to go ahead with it, make sure to use my coupon code Rollins to get 10% off that purchase. To make it easy, you can just click the link in the description box below to get that discount. So, thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's episode, and thanks to all of you guys for listening to the end. I'm recording this on Tuesday night, so by the time this comes out, the draft, thank God, will be in the books. I can't wait. Drop me a comment on some of the craziest things that happened in the draft. Who went too high, who went too low, which general manager forgot to hit mute. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. So yeah, alright, until next Saturday, see ya.